Hello again, Steve here with a few comments on a video that somebody sent me recently. It was about a lawyer somewhere in South Australia who was driving allegedly like a maniac, allegedly, possibly under the influence of alcohol, and basically plowed over a cyclist who he hit so hard that the head of the guy riding the bicycle actually dished in the windshield of the car. He was going at a high rate of speed on a highway, and you can imagine your head hitting the windshield of the car to the point where you actually dish in the windshield. And windshields, they don't break because they have this. They have a plastic film in the inside, so they don't shatter. They just cave in. And to the point where it looked like a car that a deer had hit, where the whole fender is curled in and stuff, and it's flung off the road. We can imagine that this guy riding the bicycle was probably killed instantly. And this was documented. There was a witness to the incident who actually wrote down somebody following close behind or something like that, or ahead, whatever. Anyway, was able to write down the license plate number. It was investigated as to who was the owner of the car, who was driving the car. It was credit card receipts of having purchased something back a ways. In fact, it was 3 bottles of wine and a bottle of beer. A whole bunch of things that it was clear cut that this is, well, as clear cut as it could be, that this is who it was. The thing is, who it was one of the most senior criminal prosecuting attorneys or lawyers in Adelaide, Australia. And not surprising to anybody who thinks about it, he was basically given a slap on the wrist or whatever. He still practices as a lawyer, never went to jail, and he admits that he ran over a cyclist and killed him in interviews on national news and such. And of course, it was, and if you watch the documentary, I'll put a link for the documentary down below about this, and if you follow through it appears to be a complete smear cover-up for this guy. And I say it's not surprising because, first of all, if you look into it, the Bar Association seems to be a group of people who would potentially take care of themselves, like a secret society. So, and the police are perhaps subservient to them, I don't know, or junior to them. So it seems like the police may have also not done their job and helped to cover, by omitting things that had helped to cover this up. I don't know that for sure. But most importantly this, I would say, the lawyer, this McGee guy, who's a senior prosecutor or whatever, he knows how the statutes are written. He knows they don't apply to him when he's driving his personal car out on the road. Because guess what? A legal person, of which all the statutes apply to, cannot drive a car. So while he was guilty of the facts of having been driving along the road and hitting a guy riding a bike on the side road and killing him, the statutes under which he was being prosecuted under wouldn't apply to him. The average Joe doesn't know this, so he basically probably did not stand as surety for the legal person that was being charged. He as a man wasn't being charged, because that's not how it works in a court. It was a legal fiction that was being charged, and he knows well enough not to stand in surety for that legal person. Therefore, he's untouchable. And he just agreed to a couple of things so that the people, the ignoramuses that we are out there in the public, make it look like there was some sort of due process of justice. And what did they do? They gave him a small fine and suspended his driver's license for a while. That's it. Still practices as a lawyer, etc. And so, I don't know, what can we learn from this? Well, if we watch things like this and we're aware of it, and we wonder why it is that some people would get away with things like this. We understand that there has to be something fishy. There has to be something, well, criminal we might call it, but criminal in the real sense of the word. And what's the biggest criminality really is the fact that we're not taught these sorts of things. We're not taught that these people know something that we don't know, and what they're talking about is not us. You see, this is why I think, I could be wrong on all this, but this is my sense. Remember the O.J. Simpson trial? O.J. Simpson, who had a very clever lawyer backing him up, was not guilty of anything, or whatever the term is, wasn't charged with anything or whatever, on the criminal trial. When it came to the civil trial, he was. Because in civil trial, all of a sudden, if it's a real civil trial, now I don't know if it's a real civil trial, but if it is a real civil trial, or a real, a case brought by somebody who has been harmed, an injured party you might call it, a case brought by an injured party, then it applies. But the thing is, if you look at what happened with this lawyer, it was like the state trying to prosecute him. And the state, or anybody working on that side of it, is not an injured party. They're just trying to implement codes and statutes upon him. But he's wise enough at that point to say, at this moment, while I was driving, the codes didn't apply to me. I was driving as a man driving a car, not a legal person. I suspect you won't find this even if you read the court transcripts, perhaps, because they're either edited out or we don't understand what went on in the back rooms with all of his secret meetings that he had before he even bothered talking to the cops, and so on, in terms of the strategy of who we're going to bring in this fraudulent psychologist, bring in one lawyer after another for every event, the lyingest shysters you can find, who are very brilliant though, who know this stuff and who know how to navigate around it and make sure that the jury is stacked in a certain way. These people are masters at that, of course, because, well, it's their profession. I mean, it's like anything else. If you're a carpenter, well, you know how to put up a wall a lot quicker than anybody else. Or if you know how to play a guitar really well, you don't even have to think about it. It's just natural. Well, when your job is basically lying for a living and being very crafty at grammar and word trickery, this is, I would suspect, how it works. And the whole crime, I would say, of this legal person that we're not told about, but yet which is the only thing that's in the courtroom, and we don't realize. We play surety for it. That's why there's a term called surety. Surety is to be the one who will pay the bills for that entity when there's a charge. The charge is laid upon that entity, and we show up and say, yeah, that's my name. Well, if it's your name, then whatever bill is on it is yours, right? Or whatever the charge is, like if it's 10 years in prison is on that, and you say, yeah, that's my name, boom, right? But the lawyer knows this. And actually it's funny because I actually know of a lawyer who I talked to about this recently. And if you look it up in your local statutes, you'll find the same thing. But here in this juridical area that people get freaked out about, that is something called Saskatchewan. If you look it up in the Interpretations Act, a person is a corporation. Okay, it doesn't say at all that it's a man anywhere in there. It doesn't say at all, right? And it's the same thing anywhere, just different wording. And therefore, the name whatever so-and-so McGee, in the courtroom, they're referring to a corporation. So if he decides he's not going to show up for that, it doesn't matter that he killed somebody. That's completely irrelevant. As a man, it doesn't matter if he killed somebody. What matters is if he violated a code, or if the court thinks that he was operating under or through that legal corporation, and in so doing, violated a code in the artificial jurisdiction called that state, right? And if that can be proven, that is the first thing to prove. The court's got to, well, they operate under presumption, but a lawyer that brilliant is not going to let away with he's not going to let presumptions fly if they're going to harm him, right? I mean, this is why Bill Clinton got off, getting blowjobs, and that wasn't sex. He's a brilliant lawyer, right? It's because it doesn't apply to the man. You cannot give a blowjob to a legal fiction. And Bill Clinton knows that. You cannot drive a car a legal fiction cannot drive a car. Only a man or a woman can drive a car. So, and I'm sure that the state didn't even bother trying to nail this guy with that. They know damn well there's no going there, right? Because he's going to be a lawyer one minute, the next he's not. When he was in that courtroom, he was no longer a lawyer, you can be sure. That's why he had a lawyer standing beside him, representing him as a lawyer. Ain't no way he was going to be no lawyer, right? He was probably just a private man there. And in that case, there's no jurisdiction. None. He played jurisdiction for a very brief moment, I'm sure, just to allow the other little minor charges to stick. Okay, driver's license gone for a few weeks or whatever, a small fine, big deal, we're out of here. At least some form of justice was created, right? How does this improve the quality of our lives? Well, once again, just being aware of these sorts of things, these tricks that are played on people, only because we didn't ask questions. That, I think, is the trick. That, I think, is the trick. And I really admire, although I really feel for the lady who's, of course, mostly because she lost her husband, somebody she loves, and the girls, in that documentary. I mean, she worked hard, and it was interesting at one point, her driving force seemed to really take traction, she said, when she said something about she started asking questions and wasn't getting answers. Well, no wonder she's not getting any answers. But asking questions for us to ask questions of our own presumptions. Why is it that it looks like we got to live under all these kinds of rules? And yet, certain people, like this lawyer, apparently doesn't. If that was anybody else who had run over somebody and killed them, it wouldn't have taken 2 weeks they'd been on trial. And they'd still be in jail. Because they wouldn't know the difference between themselves as man or woman and the legal person. The legal person sure as hell was guilty. Or if you say that you're operating under the legal person, if you agree that you're the legal person, like, promise to state the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Are you so-and-so? Yes. Okay, well, that's written on the docket. That's what the charge is, all capital letters, that name. It's a corporation against another corporation. A corporation called government against the other corporation called the corporate soul of, Joe Blow, whatever. And if yes, that's me, that's like saying you're playing the chess game and you got your hand on the rook. At that moment, you're the rook. You got to play by the rules of the rook at that moment. You say that that's that, and you can be sure. I would have loved to be the fly on the wall watching how clever that lawyer was when he was asked questions. I'd bet my ass he wouldn't have been so open to take surety for that name on the docket. But I could be wrong. I always leave that open. It's just speculation. I'm going to say a shout out to Durian Ryder. Thank you for posting this on the web. I think it's too bad. I know you got a big following, and you've had your own court troubles recently. And I did post something on because you had requested, tips and so on how to deal with courts. I posted something on your YouTube account, and it disappeared. I suspect you deleted it because you get lots of stuff on there and you thought it was spam. But just saying, have a little bit of a look, and if there's not remedy, there's not remedy in that system. I don't think. I haven't seen any evidence, and I haven't heard any evidence of it, of there being remedy in that system. But the remedy, I think, is really within ourselves to realize what's going on. And it's not really going to change. We have to change. We have to change by just dropping our recognition of it as having any validity. It's a fraud system. It's a system that is set up. We're not told about it. We're not told about the many presumptions that are made when we walk in there. And it's a rat's nest, a hornet's nest when we walk in there. We walk in there, there's an all capitals letter, legal fiction, which we are presumed to be standing surety for, to be taking responsibility for. And we don't know that we have the option not to. We don't know. But the lawyer sure as hell knows. And I suspect that's why he didn't end up carrying the bag for this. You know, and it was a criminal trial where it was the state, or the crown, if you will, going after him. It was not an injured party going after him. Therefore, it was not like a civil case would be. And therefore, all he had to do in some sort of word games is not to admit to be anything surety for that, and in fact demand proof from Crown prosecution that they can prove that he was operating under that legal fiction at the time of the incident. And of course they have no proof of that. And added to that, the Crown prosecution, who was prosecuting him, was part of his secret blood society called the Bar Association, and therefore basically probably one of his buddies. And so was presiding judge. They're all part of the same organization. It's all an in-house game going on. And there's not likely to be much justice when you see something like that happening. So improving the quality of our lives is just helping us to wake up to the many scams that are out there. And one of the biggest scams is the so-called justice system. I like to think it's called a criminal justice system. It's called that because it's run by criminals. The worst type of criminals. But when we wake up and see it, hey, we can get to say, we've done our best to learn, to understand, and get to the bottom of it by asking questions. Don't follow anything that I say, that's for sure. Do your own research and have a look at the video. See what you think. I think it's a video with many different lessons to it. Not the least of which is a woman who I give a big thumbs up for giving it all she had with the limited knowledge she had to try to seek justice in these departments. And she didn't, I don't think. I hope she's wiser for it, though. And I hope many more are wiser for it, waking up to this. Steve here again. It was great chatting. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye for now.